In the 1980s, America had been convinced that Satan wasn't just real, he was organized. Not in churches, not in politics, but in daycares, record stores, and even in your kid's bedroom. Parents were told their children were being indoctrinated through heavy metal records, role-playing games, and imagination itself. There were talk show experts, police, seminars, and thousands of accusations. There was just one problem. There was no evidence. Tonight, we're talking about the Satanic Panic, a moment in American history when fear mattered more than facts, and the teenage dirtbag became the perfect suspect. You're listening to the Bunker Buddies podcast.
I don't want to start a panic or watch the whole world burn. Just shine a little flashlight on secrets we never learn. Down in the bunker, buddies, where the shadows love to stay. Murder myths and monsters keep the daylight far away. So pull the door and lock it tight. Let the static fade to black. There's no turning back.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome back to the Bunker Buddies podcast. I'm your host, JD, and today, again, we're joined with Texas, Beer, Beans, and Bullets. All right, so today we're going to continue on with this whole teenage dirtbag series we got going on here. And we're going to dive into Satanic Panic and why that was important to the, teenage dirtbag era. So, I really want to kind of first start off with why the teenage dirtbag and Satanic Panic are kind of mixed together and how those kind of interlock. Because the idea of like a teenage dirtbag didn't really start with crime. It kind of more started with like anxiety and like being nervous about what was going on in America during the late 70s and the early 80s, kind of with the culture, how it was moving and changing so fast. I mean, divorce rates were up, manufacturing jobs were disappearing, kids were spending more time unsupervised. I mean, this is also around the same time that they started making commercials of like, at 10 o'clock at night, they'd come on and they'd be like, do you know where your children are at? So through all that, through the music, the clothes, the skating culture, the attitude, it kind of like brought a big disturbance to like the older generation. It looked a lot like more like disrespect than independence. So like the media and pop culture created a new stereotype: the teenage dirtbag. The teenage dirtbag was lazy, he was angry, he was ungrateful, often from the working class, usually male. Someone who rejected kind of the authority tradition of like the American dream, and I think this was also kind of the death of the American dream leaving this era as well, and that's a completely different conversation. But this is also the same time period of the teenage dirtbag. So I think what made the teenage dirtbag more threatening in kind of these small towns was it was a lack of like apathy. It didn't want like parents to really have kids express themselves. They kind of had a idea of what you should be doing and what you should be as like a teenager. Everything was kind of set out like, when you graduate high school, you're going to join me in the factory, and we're going to work all these hours, and you're going to be able to kind of buy a house and do this, and everything was kind of laid out. And as long as you were working 40 plus hours a week, you'd be able to afford a house. You'd be able to go to college. There's all this stuff. So I don't think the teenage dirtbag was born evil. He was more labeled that way. So kind of diving into this, I think we should talk about the music of it all. I think music played a big role going into this. What is your opinions on that?
Well, I think that the term teenage dirtbag is something that's, in terms of practice, has been around for a lot longer than what we're talking about before the Satanic Panic. Mm-hmm. I think that tied in with the last part of this discussion with the murders and all of that. Anyway, just check out the last part of it. But Weedus actually kind of brought it to the forefront, like in the song that they made, Teenage Dirtbag. It kind of brought it back to the forefront and got a lot of the non-free range parents.
Yeah,
if you want to call it, because like the 70s and 80s was like free range parenting, because this is like at the end of the hippie era. This is love and peace, man. This is after the Vietnam thing, and everybody's like, oh, we don't want to have anything to do with the man. That was the big term there. And those people had children, and those children matured into what we consider now to be those teenage dirtbags. Those that are expressing themselves, like you just said, differently. My opinions on it are just pretty much that. I think it was just a matter of perspective by the adults kind of coming of the age of realizing, oh shit, this is what everybody's going to be doing now. And this is the new generation. This is the new direction that they've kind of taken it compared to where we were, which was shut up, keep your head down, work hard, that kind of thing. And granted, you can't get away from all of the supposed murders and satanic influence, but that again, going against the rules, what does that tie into? The dark side of humanity from their perspective, right? Coming from conservative Christianity.
I agree, and definitely this is why I want to talk about the music of it all, because I think art reflects kind of what's going on in the world at that point in time. I mean, you look back on like the Renaissance era, and we look back at the art.
Oh, you only go that far back. Okay.
But I'm just saying, like, art in general, not just music, but art reflects society, and I think in this period of time, art really does with the music that was coming out. I mean, this is also the era that ends up birthing out what then becomes grunge. I mean, we're years apart, but I'm just saying, this is the era that these bands were born into. They were raised in. They saw what was going on. You end up getting stuff like grunge. Where this is more of I think this is like peak rock and roll. I think this is where rock kind of really like finds like a solid foundation. I mean, you get Elvis in that in the 50s. In the early 60s, and we start moving, but I mean, it progresses dramatically from just here to now we're getting into Woodstock, and we're getting all these bigger concerts, and we're getting some amazing musicians like Jimi Hendrix, the Keys, we're getting Dee Snider, we're getting Ozzy Osbourne, we're getting all these big bands that have a different sound, which again is going against the conservative Christian household. Which then brings on these, lawsuits that then happen across the U.S.
That was part of it as well, but these influences are coming from all over the world. It's not just localized. I know you're selecting a lot of stuff from here in the U.S., but this is also coming from like AC/DC. In Australia, they're doing world tours. They're mixing up with a lot of people from the UK.
The Sex Pistols from the UK, yeah.
And this has, let's not forget about the Norwegians, they haven't exactly came into death metal yet, but they are leaning into this darker form of music. They're playing with this deeper sound. This is before the death metal and all of that even becomes a full thing of its own. Mm-hmm. But that music, it's strange because when you see like where everyone's from, it's almost like rebelliousness just for the sake of rebelliousness.
Yeah,
it's kind of strange that the music reflects that.
I agree, and I mean, it gets to the point where, and I always argue that America as a whole has been very progressive with no matter what it does. It is always trying to be on the forefront of what it's trying to do. And I know that it's not necessarily true, but just in modern times, I want to say, let's just say the last 200 years, we've been very forward with how we look at things. Because, I mean, we start getting stuff like this where it goes all the way to the Senate. The Senate starts hearing lyrics and metal music and punk. And then, I mean, going into like the late 80s, early 90s, we start looking at like hip hop and rap lyrics. And that is a continuation, again, from this generation that grew up being teenage dirtbags. And I guess Congress's like big thing to solve this is they heard that sex, Satan, and rebellion was talked about in these lyrics, and they decided, you know what, stickers would fix this. And I mean, that's where they're all like I mean, granted, Congress has done this quite a bit where they go, you know, we're on drugs, say no to drugs, and it's these things where they're like, if we just put it on a sticker, kids are going to be like, that's it. That's the way to go.
And every war since Vietnam has been lost. The war on drugs, the war on satanic abuse, the war on poverty, the war on everything.
War on fat kids.
It has just been downhill. Mm-hmm. But you're right. We throw a sticker on it. We say we did something, take more taxpayer money, call it a day.
Yep.
We all feel better about ourselves.
I mean, this also then makes a connection between your music taste is also that becomes your moral alignment, which is kind of where we're at today. Not going too much in it, but I mean, today we look at what your political views say about your religious views and vice versa, which, again, don't necessarily need to have a connection at all. I don't think they should. I think you should be able to compartmentalize everything else, but I don't understand why your taste in music also then becomes your moral alignment. I feel like you can listen to different things and be like, okay, I get this is what this is. And then teens who aligned with those dangerous musics were then labeled dangerous for the consumption and not really their actions. Because, I mean, I've seen big, tough men going in and out of gyms who were, like, super ripped, and you're obviously like, oh, man, they're probably listening to, like, heavy metal and death metal, and those guys are usually listening to, like, Barbie by Aqua.
Fucking boy band shit.
Yeah, dude, they're like, it's Britney, bitch, and they're just like, yeah, you're getting a pump on. But again, it's the fact that people judge you based off the music you listen to, or by how you look like. They assume you like a certain type of music.
I think that there are stereotypes like in everything, and music just happens to also be one of those categories that people are stereotyped. Because you can't be a tough guy, you can't be any of these things if you listen to anything other than death metal, heavy metal, rock, any of this stuff.
Yeah.
You might skate by with like southern rock or like outlaw rock, you know, where it's got like more of a country tone. You might be able to skate by with that, but that's about as far as you can go.
But even then, in this time period, you wouldn't be able to skate by in that. Mm-hmm. In the late 70s, early 80s, a lot of that was actually kicked out of... I'm totally blanking on their big hall. What's country's big hall? It's the...
in the 70s and 80s?
Yeah, I mean, it's still a relevant hall today.
I'm not the guy for country music. I just mentioned it just for the fact that I know that there were certain people that were still considered tough guys in the old days, but they listened to like the older country music. And it was, again, these generally you go to a bar and it'd be several of these guys drinking beer, but they would take you out back and beat the shit out of you, you know. So I don't want to negate those people either.
Yeah, but I mean, like, when we start looking into that as well, I mean, even country music was drawing fine lines. I mean, country music wasn't allowed to have like bass drums for the majority of the music going into almost, I want to say, the early 80s, because they said that was too urban. And I'm going to put urban in quotations and say it that way because it was very southern in this period of time in America.
You're the country guy, man.
Oh, I do. I love me country music, but I'm just saying, like, that's why I also say some of the best country music is from the 90s. Maybe I'm biased because that's kind of where I grew up and that's music that I listen to, but 90s country kind of really changed it, because late 80s you start bringing in those bass drums, you start getting more of that urban feel, and it's a very mix of an influence. I also think that's why country music today is also on the rise.
Because they have a little bit of the blues like in the background. Mm-hmm. You know, you can kind of hear like some of the country music when it starts to get that southern twang, but they keep that, but then they mix in a light peppering of other genres, blues especially. But you also have like the southern, like I keep saying, the southern rock thing, because that's where it's kind of progressing to now. And well, not now. Now it's leaning more into the hip hop side of country, which is strange, because to say that country music has that in it is not something I'd ever thought I would mix together.
It's almost a reversal, but we also see that in society, and I mean, we see it in politics as well, as everything at some point flips and it kind of reverts. And it's really interesting to see all that. But I mean, at this point in time, and it happens from like the late 70s, again, all the way until like I want to say the early 2000s, where Congress was basically, it was either Congress or it was some type of court system was always taking some musician to court for being satanic, for being like devil music, because of the influence it had on the young people, the youths. Because I mean, Dee Snider, that was a huge one. I don't know if you ever looked into Dee Snider's court case, and like they try to go after Dee Snider for some of their music. You get into, I mean, it's the hair bands too. I mean, they got into it with Twisted Sister, with Kiss, but I mean, like you get, I say Ozzy Osbourne again, but I mean, like it's the hair bands, it's everybody who was under a microscope going into the like late 90s. Cooper. Yeah, going into the late 90s, it switches from rock and to grunge, and then it slowly transitions into hip hop and that kind of subgenre of music where you start getting Eminem in the news, you get Marilyn Manson, and you get all these other people under a microscope, because it was these kids are listening to this kind of music. And I think also a big reason for a lot of this is because people didn't get their news from these nationalized like news stations. Like today we get it from Fox, we get it from ABC, CNN. We have all these big organizations that are owned by like big companies that are saying what they can and cannot say. But back in like the late 70s, early 80s, you get your news from where? Your church. You get a group of people together, and especially in small towns, you had a small town newspaper and you had your local church. And that's where you get a lot of your information from. A lot of these small communities started building these folklore that almost become true, where they go, oh, did you hear about this murder? And they decapitated babies, and they're eating goats, and it gets out of control. None of that happened. There's no proof that none of this happens, but it becomes this game of telephone throughout these small churches. Then I also think is what also pushes a lot of the youth away from where the church was to where it is. And you could watch this kind of cycle of people coming in and out of the church because of the misinformation that is going through local news. And I mean, misinformation is a big word today because everybody uses it, and it's the hashtag fake news and everything. But this has been going on, I want to say, since the dawn of time. It is this game of telephone of what can you actually trust.
Fake news. Yeah, fake news goes all the way back to what we consider to be classical era. There was fake news during Xerxes' time. Mm. Fake news, right? Whatever you would like to call that. There's always a rumor mill 24/7. No matter what society you're in, there's always something that happens.
Yeah, and I mean, one that pops in my mind always when we talk about fake news, and I think people kind of overlook it, is if I said, "Let them eat cake." Is that an actual quote that Marie Antoinette said? No, it was a newspaper that was printed that said that this is what she said. But nowhere in history does it prove that she ever said that. It was someone that was just like, you know what's going to get the people riled up? Let them eat cake. And I think it's stuff like that where you have to look at it and be like, cool.
Little yellow journalism.
Yeah.
Never hurt nobody. It only toppled governments. No big deal.
But we look back on a lot of stuff like that where are you getting your information from? And this is also why I'm a very, like, let me see your research. Let me look at it for myself before I make any rash decisions, because we get in stuff like Satanic Panic, which, I mean, this isn't the first time, but I definitely think in the U.S. this is the biggest time where we start looking at the youth as the enemy instead of the future. We start looking at the youth of being disrespectful, and they're going around murdering babies. They're not. They're just tired of being told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and they think everything is kind of like boxed into it. Especially when you're saying that their music is the devil's music. So I want to talk a little about that too. Is that we talked about the misinformation and there are these rumors going on, but some of this panic does turn deadly. I mean, there's the famous or infamous, I guess you would say, the West Memphis Three. Do you remember any of this?
I have brushed on the subject. I'm not by any means going to be your go-to guy for this, but if I was to tell you all that I have, I could probably fill a thimble with it. It's not very much.
Yeah, my overview of this is not very much either. It is something that I just know because it didn't happen long ago. I say that, but actually it was quite a long ago compared to today. This was in 93, which to me doesn't feel that long ago. You say like 1990, I think that's 10 years ago.
It's 30 years ago. It's 30 years ago, my boy, I'm telling you right now. You feel old yet?
But I'm just saying, so in 93, 3 8-year-old boys were found murdered in West Memphis, Arkansas, or Kansas, right? Mm-hmm. Arkansas.
Depends who you're asking, but yeah.
So obviously this crime shocked the town. It quickly spread. It became a media frenzy. People across the U.S. kind of hear about this. The police focus on local teenagers. So we grabbed 3 local teenagers, Damien, Jason, and Jesse. There is no physical evidence that they were involved or anything like that, but they quote unquote looked wrong, according to police. They wore black. They listened to heavy metal.
They were legitimately what everyone claims to be. Hey, you guys stereotyped us. You're profiling. You pulled us for that reason, and that's literally what they were pulled for.
Yeah, this again part of the Satanic Panic is we said late 70s, early 80s, but I mean it goes through until like almost the early 2000s, where it's the Satanic Panic. So they're still saying that this is all evil. They're talking about because they listened to like this heavy metal, the death metal, that this is all satanic. That they were part of. Some people claimed again that they were part of satanic rituals. They were kind of like coerced into giving confessions. Again, there was no DNA evidence. There was no murder weapon. There was no actual credible forensic proof that these teens committed these crimes. Despite all these, the 3 were convicted. However, over the years, because the case drew quite a big attention, they've made movies about it, documentaries about it. In 2011, after new DNA evidence failed to link them to that crime, all 3 men were released. I mean, one man, he was a little older. I think he was like 18, 19 at the time of their arrest. He was sentenced to death. Like, they were like death row. The rest of them, I think they did juvie, and then they went into the actual prison system.
Yeah, they served hard time when they were technically old enough to.
Mm-hmm. But they aged out. But yeah, and then again, 2011, they were all released, and there's some great movies and documentaries about this that I recommend people go and check out. And if this is interesting to you, please go check it out, because the West Memphis 3, I think it was also a great depiction of just mishandling of everything from the start to the end. And again, this doesn't stop with just this local police. I mean, OJ.
Arkansas is well known for being one of the worst states for handling corruption, for any type of what you call mismanagement. of not only information but evidence. This is where the Clintons, which by the way, I love my life and I'm not at all suicidal, but the Clintons, this is where they broke their rocks, was in politics in Arkansas. And Arkansas has, just look at the slew of murders that have been unsolved, the amount of quote suicides unquote that have never been solved by political rivals and people that are donors that are it. If you look into Arkansas as a state as a whole, the politics of it are fucking insane. These 3 children that have been killed, unfortunately, it's a terrible thing. There's no way to really know what really happened. I don't see. I get it, like you're saying, that they pinned it all on those teenagers. I still don't know if that was really true. I don't think anybody does.
Yeah, I don't think anybody does, and I think that's a shame. It's stuff like that, but it's also the police were pressured by the local town to solve it,
to find an answer.
And sometimes when you don't have an answer, you got to make one up, especially to settle the town and to settle like the media frenzy that it was. And what's an easier way than to be like Satanic Panic, teenage dirtbags, here you go, and kind of push them out there that way.
They tied into that. But when we're talking about the Satanic Panic and like these influences, are we going to not lay some of the base layers prior to this? Like in terms of media, we've covered music, but what about like movies?
Oh yeah, let's talk about it. So what in movies do you think influences this?
I mean, for sure, we've got a 1968 movie called Rosemary's Baby. This was a pretty big movie at the time. It was actually considered to be unviewable by most audiences. It was one of those movies that was aired. They put it in theaters and then they took it down, saying it was too much. Shortly after that was The Exorcist in '73. Let's not pretend that didn't happen. And then 3 years later in '76, there was a movie, The Omen, which all revolve around Satan. Obviously, it's demon possession, being under the influence of, the occult, or in this case, opening doorways in the Christian belief, playing with the Mattel Ouija board or whoever makes it. Playing with that is leaving a gateway open, and you're opening yourself to these terrible things. Whether that's right or wrong or works or don't, I'm not here to prove or disprove it, but that is along the same lines of there's evil that's without a media or without people. It cannot fully express itself. So mankind needs to be used as a vehicle, and in these movies they push that. And the music, when you listen to this music, you're being influenced heavily. Because in what we consider to be the classic times, right, the end of the baby boomer era, these guys were very by the book. You go to work, you lace your shoes up, you do all this shit, shower, shave. Everything is by the numbers, because you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, that kind of mentality. And then these kids show up at the end of this, right? This is the end of the baby boomers, beginning of what we consider to be free love and the hippie movement and all this shit. What that essentially is taken as, what we just discussed, as being counterculture or satanic, and it eventually warps into that. And now the movies are pushing the boundaries in this same line, which is, hey, look, you stray from the path, and this is what happens, that kind of thing. Now we also need to mention that this is around the same time that the new religious movements are allowed in the 1960s. This means that other options are now available other than Christianity. These allow Asian cultures to come in and to not only openly practice their religious beliefs, because there's enough of them now. Not that it was completely suppressed, but it wasn't as mainstreamly accepted, and the missionaries were not allowed to run around and do what they're doing in the 60s. Once this happens, this allows them to do that. And then, unfortunately for the conservative Christian conservative Christian groups, this also opens the door to the opening of the Church of Satan. This goes to Anthony McVeigh and that whole thing, the Black Church, the Black Mass, all of that.
Yeah.
This is all in the 60s. So this creates what we consider to be the cult wars or the culture wars or whatever. And then of course, talking about murders, you cannot forget the Tate.
Goddamn, dude.
You good?
I just can't stop. You're good.
You need some water?
No, we're good.
The Tate LeBlanca murders, because Shannon Tate, of course, by the Children of Spawn Ranch, headed by Charles Manson. Those murders happened in California. Helter Skelter, that whole thing. Technically, that's not considered satanic because it's. Why would that be related? Well, now there's literal human blood with 666 painted on the walls. There's all this other demonic imagery, that type of thing. Helter Skelter, race wars. That's not of course, you're going to say that's not of God. So these are all things that also was the foundational framework for, hey, there's enough of this shit happening. We should probably pay attention to it. This free range adulthood thing that we're doing, it's not going to work. We need to start reining people back in because this counterculture is it's like herding cats. They're starting to just get everywhere. We need to bring them back, in my opinion. So whenever we talk about these time periods, you keep mentioning the 70s and 80s. I feel like it's important to mention those as
stuff that happened. Yeah, there's definitely the stuff that happened in the background, and I mean, again, it's the media, it's the music, another form of, I guess, media that picks up a lot of popularity is some board games. The one that I'm referring to is Dungeons and Dragons. Kind of born in the 70s, really picks up. This gets associated with Satan and kind of the Satanic Panic because playing Dungeons and Dragons is evil. The nerds, not just the cool kids, because Dungeons and Dragons are for the nerds. The nerds, those are Satan worshippers. Those are the evil ones because playing games where you dress as elves definitely means you love Satan and that you will kill. Because I don't know if any of you have seen anybody play Dungeons and Dragons. I love Dungeons and Dragons. I have a Dungeons and Dragons tattoo myself. But I just think it's funny that they're like, oh, these kids playing with dice, those are some bad kids. Because, I mean, they start looking at Dungeons and Dragons and they go, the dice are associated with demons and role-playing is led to suicides. And schools and church start banning these games of just Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, at this time, America believed that the most dangerous thing was this 20-sided die. I think that is hilarious because, I mean, we look at Dungeons and Dragons now. I feel every time I bring it up, you roll your eyes because it's such a great game that everybody can play.
I don't do that. all that I say is nerd, and I point at you, and that's it. I don't get into it. I mean, I don't know enough about it. But if we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, do you remember in 1985 is when they actually made a whole coalition for Dungeons and Dragons, people against it. It was by Patricia Pulling. She joined with a psychiatrist named Thomas Radecki, and this is the director of the National Coalition on Television Violence. They created BADD, B-A-D-D, Bothered About Dungeons and Dragons.
Are you bad?
They saw the role-playing game generally, in terms of Dungeons and Dragons, they saw it generally as a bad thing, and specifically as a satanic cult recruitment tool, which introduced the youths, like you're saying, to suicide, murder, and other satanic ritual abuse. So there's other recruitment tools. Of course, this leads into the heavy metal. This is around the time of the 80s when this is coming out. So all of these things are all working together, and it's like a big satanic conspiracy.
Mm-hmm. I also think this is also why. I mean, I have no proof of this, but in my personal opinion, I also think this is why Mountain Dew was never brought into the Cola Wars, because they were associated with Dungeons and Dragons. Because if you ask me to picture out a group of kids playing Dungeons and Dragons, you know what I imagine? A basement. I imagine shag carpet, and I don't know why. I feel like shag carpet has to be somewhere in the house. It could be on the walls because I've definitely seen that.
That or the stairs.
Or the stairs.
Sure.
It smells like BO. I imagine Doritos and Mountain Dew are the drink and chips of choice.
And then the higher up kids are able to show up with their Coca-Colas.
And the higher up kids get the Coca-Colas. I mean, if you were really cool, you'd show up with some Dr. Pepper.
They weren't that cool. So, anyway.
You're like, don't take my soda out of your mouth.
Take that out of your whore mouth.
But, I mean, Dungeons & Dragons, I mean, this has been covered in media again. It gets covered in very famous movies. I mean, a very famous TV show. I've never watched it. People are going to hate me. I've seen part of an episode when I was at your house, but it was the Netflix special. I'm even blanking on it now.
Stranger Things?
Stranger Things, yeah.
That's what I was expecting you to go with this. When you're like, you know what I picture? I'm like, the goofy kids from Stranger Things.
Yeah, because, I mean, episode 1, I know they play it there. It's a big kind of thing, but, I mean, it's also the Hell Club or whatever.
Hellfire Club.
Yeah, I don't watch the show, but...
I don't either, but I'm not going to out you publicly, even though I should, because you deserve it. But there are people that I know that buy, like, the merch from that.
Oh, yeah.
From the Stranger Things. It to me, it's fucking goofy, but sure. You know, tease their own.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously I don't watch it, but what I think is interesting, though, in that is they also kind of... You got the nerds that are playing it, obviously, but you also have a couple of the kids who think they're teenage dirtbags. They're like, I'm rebellious, I'm doing this, blah, 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 blah. And they're also playing it. So I think that it's cool that or at least in the parts that I've seen they've done, you kind of get both sides of Dungeons and Dragons in that aspect. But, I mean, again, this is all coming from just word of mouth, local media, because news reporting and how a lot of that used to go was just, oh, well, it was in the news, so it must be true. We go from that to, like, I was on Facebook. If it wasn't true, why is it on Facebook?
Well, this is part of the culture war. There is a particular guy that I think not everybody, but a lot of people do owe an apology to. He was saying that this was going to be the newest thing, and we were also of the same discussion that the limits will be pushed as far as they can in this direction, and then we'll swing back in the other. What do you think that the snapback would be of? Well, we've got all the Satanic Panic, and we've got all this. Where do you think this will go in the opposite direction? Just a quick question.
Just a quick question and I love this because definitely we see the pendulum throughout history just swing to and fro, and everything does come back. We've definitely gone through the Satanic Panic, and I think it's swinging away, but I think it is going to start coming back, and I think what replaces Satanic Panic is, I guess, blue hair panic is the best way I could put it. I think it is going to be definitely, you fit a description, and it's not, I think it is very judge a book by a cover. It's very prejudiced, but I think if you look a certain way, you will get treated a certain way, and I know a lot of people don't like that, but I mean, you also have to then be more than what you look like. I mean, same thing goes to tattoos. Tattoos also have that history of not being professional. It's not being tied to Satan.
Well, in the early days, that was one of the biggest rebellious acts, right? Was unless you did time in the service during World War II, the Great War, people got away with it. In Korea, Nam was like, at this point, from this point forward, you're either in the service with this ink, or you're now a biker, right? Because remember, this is around the time of the other rebellious, the motor rebellion. We
also just start seeing tattoos go from
the sleeve up.
From the sleeve up, now it's going down. It's hitting necks, and that's where we start hitting this phase of like, okay, you're showing it now. Where before it was on your arms, it was on your legs, it was stuff that you could cover.
Still coverable, correct. Now there was obviously outliers to all of these big general broad brushes that we're painting with here, but yeah, the majority of them were coverable because you still had to hold your job, and Most people didn't look at you all that well when you had ink on you. Minus, hey, why do you have that? Well, I served. I was here. Okay, well, as a veteran, you get the pass, right? Today, you can be fully sleeved up and never served a day in your life. There are guys that they have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of ink in their body, and what's considered counterculture now is to be without tattoos. Seems like
Yeah,
it's kind of swung the other direction now.
yeah, it definitely has. I mean, what do you think is the swing past this?
I think that the swing past this is going to be counter to what everyone's been doing. It was okay to root for the underdog. That's like the big hero come up in story. Everybody wants that. Everybody likes that. Then it was in the '80s. It was, well, we're gonna do our own thing, right? The '70s was no more war. We're against war. That was counterculture. No more working under the man. We're gonna be free and live by our own rules, and we're not gonna do all this. The '80s, it's, well, I mean, we have the Satanic Panic and all this other stuff, but all the things that they were afraid of, it's kind of condensed all down to just that. It's, we're not going to do these things. In the '80s, there's more and more tattoos happening, but not as prevalent as the 2000s. And now, if you're a family man with no tattoos and you work a job 9 to 5 and you take care of your kids and you play catch with them, you do all the things that used to be old Americana, that is now almost counterculture to what everybody else is saying you should be doing. So where do I think it's going? I think it's going back to the conservative side.
Yeah.
Maybe not ultra conservative, but I feel that it's going to go back in that direction. Because enough people have seen the folly of the free love and free range nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, we can dive into tattoos and how that kind of goes into the whole same thing. Because, I mean, around this time, too, if you look on, especially the West Coast, you look at California, who's going for this Chicano era, I would call it, is where you start getting these zoot suits and you get these lowriders and you get this style of Hispanic culture, but you're not Mexican enough to be Mexican, but you're not white enough to be American, and it's this weird culture, the Chicano culture, that ends up becoming built, and how California responds to it by banning U-turns, by banning lowriders, by doing all this. But this is also where you start getting some of these really unique and cool styles of tattoos as well.
Yeah, and that is counterculture in itself, right? It's like a middle finger to the man trying to tell us who we can and can't be. Thought this was America. I thought we were free, right? That's everyone's favorite thing to say. Thought this was America. I thought we were free.
I thought this was America.
Sorry, I thought we were in America.
Every time I think of that, I just think of Randy Marsh getting thrown out of the baseball game. I'm sorry. I thought this was America.
So that was the reference. I'm glad you got it.
All right, guys, hold on. We're going to stop the show really quick. I don't usually push stuff, but I've been rocking this really cool cowboy snapback. And I genuinely like how it fits, how it holds up, and how it doesn't feel cheap. It looks great, and it doesn't feel like one of those flimsy foam promo hats. I really encourage you guys to go check it out on their website, cowboysnapback.com. If you use my promo code Chuggers15, you'll get 15% off your order. Now, that's it. That's all I wanted to plug. It's a great hat. I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen me wear it, go check out on my Instagram, all right? That's it. We're heading right back to the show.
In terms of the Satanic Panic stuff, I feel like that's partly my fault. I'm starting to kind of mix counterculture with the Satanic Panic, because I think that's where the roots of the Satanic Panic was from just counterculture in general. Yeah. And we've seen in other stories people that have taken the satanic monikers and markings, like their imagery for theater, because like with the Russo, like with a lot of these other guys who were getting beat up and picked on and all that, when they wore these satanic things, it made them look tough. It gave them that false bravado of "don't fuck with me," and I feel like that's kind of partly what some people are still doing now, where they play that up kind of as a defense mechanism.
Yeah,
I don't feel that everything worn Gothic or satanic or whatever death metal bands, those types of T-shirts. I don't feel that any of that stuff is strictly because that's what they believe, like you're saying, but also probably part of a defense mechanism.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, this Satanic Panic movement from the 70s and 80s, early 90s, this sets the stage to make one of the greatest songs ever, and we just recently kind of covered it, is Teenage Dirtbag, and it trademarks this term, Teenage Dirtbag, because I've heard it all my life. Teenage Dirtbag, and it was always, I want to be rebellious, I want to get the anarchy shirts, the A in the circle, I want to be this, and it's punk, and you get all this cool, I mean, we get great punk music out of this era, too. And I don't think we've talked about a lot of that, but just going back down to satanic roots is just the counterculture of everything, of just being like, oh yeah, we don't need the man, lack of government. But I also think the root of all of that is we don't like the man, we don't want the man in control. And to me, if you break that down, don't correct me if I'm wrong, but this is where I think I agree with, and again, I agree with you with how it swings back conservative, is because a lot of what the conservative view is right now, too, is we don't want big government, the man, involved in what we are doing. Mm-hmm. Everything needs to be local. Everything needs to be done for the people, by the people.
Grassroots.
And I think it's the grassroots stuff that America's kind of coming back towards, and definitely is the root of the Satanic Panic of, I don't want you telling me what I can and cannot do.
And just like they had the Satanic Panic, I feel that the government or any authority in power in this point, I feel that what they're going to do, instead of the Satanic Panic, it's going to just be the Christian conservative panic or just the religious panic in general. Because they've, by they, I'm the big they, right, wherever they may be, those that are in positions of power or influence in the United States government, there is a growing secular system in the United States government. Not here or there, not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's kind of where we're sitting. And it's a lot easier to label conservative Christians as extremists. Don't believe me? They've already done it. Check it out. Mm-hmm. It's not just people that are out there killing cats in the woods or whatever, strangling puppies or whatever satanic shit that they were accused of. It's the guy that works 9 to 5, comes home, spends time with his kids, but goes shooting on the weekend. Now he's a borderline terrorist. Right. So we got to be careful. Like this does swing in the opposite direction. I feel that this is right on the precipice of happening again, but on the other side of the coin.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm here for it. I don't really have an option, but I'm definitely watching it. And I mean, I think just the rebranding, and I want to see what the new rebrand is, and I think that's where we're going, is the country boy. I was shooting on the weekends. I help my dad with the farm, and I really like that. I know a lot of city boys like to cosplay these country guys and build their big old trucks and stuff, but a bunch
of pavement princesses.
And I had that issue because, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the idea of, like, being hands-on and doing all this stuff. I mean, when I had my Jeep, I loved working on my Jeep and doing all that stuff, but then you start meeting other people who have Jeeps, who never take it off-roading, but they get the lift kits, they get the big tires, and they go, oh, I went over a curb one time. I'm like, cool. And they line their dashboards with these ducks, and I'm like, that's not what I want to do. I want to get a vehicle that I could go mudding in, that I can go over a hill in. Like, that's what I want. So I think it's really interesting that you got these people that, like, kind of rebrand it that way. And I think the rebranding of the Teenage Dirtbag during the Satanic Panic goes from, oh, you're a dirtbag, you're this, you're that, to almost like a anti-folk hero, just being like, yeah, the teenage, because I mean, in the early 2000s, you had your teenage dirtbags, and those were the cool kids, but then you also have your scene kids, your emo kids, and I mean, again, the pendulum swings. So we get away from that, we get into a new form of the Satanic Panic of just like, it's this, but I just think the rebranding of the teenage dirtbag is really interesting. I mean, the FBI even comes out saying that there's no evidence of satanic cults being linked to a lot of these murders, a lot of these crimes, a lot of these folk stories that they have. Again, the media moves on. I feel the media within 24 hours always moves on. Because I mean, you get your culture stuff like punk. You go from your like punk rock to your grunge to your alt rock to what your hip hop, your rap, your embracing of like counterculture in the early 2000s.
So here's the next question: at what point did people in generations past say, "I can listen to this and differentiate what's entertainment and what's real"? Because we laugh at them for saying, they looked at certain movies and they watched The Exorcist. We can watch that and go about our day. It's not a big deal. Back then, they watched it and there were people fainting in the theaters because they were like, oh my God, this is just too much, right? At what point are we going to reach that level again here in what we consider to be modern times? Because, I mean, we've already seen Tupac on stage. He's been dead for a long time, but we have holograms now. Mm-hmm. At what point where is this gonna? Where are we gonna have the equivalent? Because history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes.
Pretty does. I don't know where it would go. I don't know what the equivalent of that would be. I mean, obviously, the teenage dirtbag didn't disappear. It kind of outlived its time, so I don't know where we're going to look at. I honestly, that's a good question. I don't know. What's your thought on that?
I'm not sure either. I'm still kind of sifting through where we're at in terms of comparisons, trying to line up the parallels. I don't know where it'll go. I'm still of the opinion that going back to the roots, mm-hmm. whatever that means for most people, going back to the old conservative values, that's going to be the next counterculture, which is just literally going back to how things were, but not having as much trust in the government because they've proven themselves time and time again to be less trustworthy.
You don't say. I mean, we definitely need to discuss that because I don't know what you're talking about.
You're right.
The government, the government doing wrong by the people. What do you mean? You don't think they were on? I mean, they just released the Epstein files with all those black pages. Obviously,
where do we start?
That was the government standby of Black History Month.
They literally just fucking gave you the finger and said, deal with it. Yeah. Well, so why is it this? How do we get to this point? Where do we start? That's a whole nother podcast.
That is definitely a whole other podcast because do we trust the government? And I definitely agree. I think it's that counterculture because raise of hands, comments in the comment section. How many of you have discussed with your friends, your family about building a compound? Going off grid, because I can tell you I have this conversation so often, and it is something that we strive for, and we will eventually get towards here with the Bunker Buddies. But I just want to throw it out there that it is a definite culture shift. Is it because of the government? Is it because of the culture? I don't think it's because of the teenage dirtbag, but I definitely think it's how everybody reacts to the counterculture.
Well, no reason that I'm only bringing these questions up is because during these times, the teenage dirtbag kind of came out of nowhere, right? The counterculture was, well, what the hell spurred this on, right? Everyone was more or less taken by surprise. Mm-hmm. And you have a federal government that's trying to get hold of this, stop it before it grows. So instead of, hey, we're going to try to find a way to stop it, they're going to do what they do best. They're going to co-op it. And that's exactly what they did.
100%. I mean, every generation invents their own little monster to explain why kids scare them. In the 80s, I mean, that monster wore black. It listened to the rock and metal, AC/DC, Hail Satan kind of stuff. Today, I mean, our monster, has Wi-Fi and plays video games, 6, 7? I don't know. But I definitely think that is something that we will need to discuss on a future podcast and an episode of where we're kind of swinging with everything, because I really like that pendulum that pendulum swing that you're talking about, because I think there's a lot to deep dive on that in itself.
Here's another question. What if the Satanic Panic wasn't exactly exposed? What if they got just deep enough? Kind of like the fraud in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. What if they get just deep enough and then now's a distraction to divert? Because, fuck, now it's not millions. It's hundreds of millions. And if they catch a couple, we sacrificed a few to save the many. Corruption is easily found. Just wait until they dig into Ilhan Omar and her husband, who defrauded millions.
Her brother?
No, the third husband. Not every one of these guys for some reason is like, oh, she's the one. I don't get it. He defrauded the third husband allegedly, right? Because not getting sued here. Allegedly defrauded, because there's a court case. Check it out. There is a fucking, he's getting sued. Mm-hmm. There's legal proceedings happening shortly of the millions of dollars that he defrauded out of all these people in California for a winery that is in an empty building. That's nothing but a parking lot. There are no vines, no grapes, no anything. It's literally like walking into an old Kmart. Parking lot's empty. No, you can't buy wine there. You could find their...
it's just like their leering centers where there's no kids.
Yeah, not learning, leering. You're correct. And it's empty, but there was millions of dollars invested. Right around $5 million, $5.5 million, somewhere around there is kind of what they were estimating on initial first year. Now, where it goes from there, I don't know. But just so you know, she has that on her taxes. So
I get that. I think it is, we dive too far into the Satanic Panic. Does it really get resolved? Is it still there? I definitely agree, because, I mean, during this time, I think there's also a lot of conspiracy theories that go on in this area about this subject of Satanic Panic as well. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, over the years, conspiracy theorists went from, we're wearing our tinfoil hats because the aliens are monitoring us crazy, to a lot of these conspiracy theories.
We're going to have to come up with some new ones.
Because they're all coming true. Yeah. I mean, recently the fact that people are like, oh, I can't believe I didn't see it. But recently we were like, oh, Helen Keller was a fraud. And we're like sitting here being like, we said this from the beginning. I know it's not going to happen until he passes, but I think we're going to get the same thing with what's his face,
Stevie Wonder.
Stevie Wonder. I honestly think Stevie Wonder isn't blind. I think he has like
terrible
vision.
eyesight.
Yeah, I think he has a vision impairment. But I definitely think this mofo can see, like,
he has like really bad fucking cataracts, like something explainable, but
because there's stories about like him pushing buttons in elevators, him knowing who's standing near him. The fact that every time he calls somebody, he FaceTimes them.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's fucking great.
Multiple celebrities are like, yeah, no, Stevie Wonder FaceTimed me.
I mean, does the iPhone allow you to just say, hey, FaceTime this person?
No, you have to click that option.
Oh.
Which is the other thing.
Okay, maybe someone does it for him. I have no idea how that works.
But that's what I'm saying. Is I think the conspiracy.
Hold on, there are some questions here now. We are starting to march into some really suspicious activity at this point.
But I agree. I mean, another conspiracy theory when we talk about, oh, we scraped the service and we kind of all backed off from it. Because I think it was a big thing back in 2015 and everybody kind of like, I think everybody backed off of it. It's something that I want to cover. Is the Denver International Airport.
Oh, yeah, that's really weird how that happened.
Do you remember, like, in 2015, everybody was, like, super involved in it. Everybody wanted, and we all kind of just...
Yeah.
And I go,
nothing to see here, folks. It's just all for luggage down here. Mm-hmm. Giant hallways for luggage. Don't worry.
You know what else? We mentioned the Epstein files, and again, talking about scraping the surface. Something that got brought up in the Epstein files and now has a little asterisk next to it, at least for me, is that what was a big conspiracy before the Epstein files about child trafficking was Pizzagate. Mm-hmm. Stuff like that was brought up during the Epstein files.
John Podesta, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, are we going to learn that Pizzagate wasn't a conspiracy? That it actually was a thing that was going on?
Really weird, because all of these people that are doing these things, what is part of satanic rituals? There's actually a name for it. I'll give me one fucking second.
All right. But I think it's very incredible that you brought that up, and I agree with this whole satanic panic that we're talking about. Is that it doesn't die, it just rebrands itself. And with this is that we're skimming the surface on some of these subjects over the years that we get so deep, and then we kind of just like, as a society, media moves on. And I think that's also the issue, is that the media moves on.
Well, they referred to it, let's see, Michelle Remembers was written by Canadians Michelle Smith and her husband, who was a psychiatrist, Lawrence Patzer, in 1980. It's considered to be discredited now, but it was a book written in the form of an autobiography presenting the first modern claim that child abuse was linked to satanic rituals. SRA, satanic ritual abuse, right? That's the term that people have used since the 80s. What if somebody got really close? Because they said the FBI and everybody else, after doing all of this stuff, Congress getting involved, all these thousands and thousands of man hours and hundreds of fucking millions of dollars at this point being invested in all these keep children safe programs, have yielded the results of there's really no international or even interstate at this point satanic cults linked together. There's no proof of this. It's all hearsay. Sounds oddly familiar, and it echoes what they said about the Italian mafia that was all over the United States, that really was not linked together and had no form of communication that they could trace or track, had any what's correct. No way that they could tell what's going on. Because these guys are all immigrants, they can't read, they can't write. How would they form an interstate and at some point international organized crime syndicate? And you're like, yeah,
Underneath the nose of the FBI.
which is exactly what happened. Exactly what happened. But we're gonna pretend that didn't. So let's say maybe we did get close to this, and maybe they just went deeper underground. They cut off a few to sacrifice them, keep the rest of them, which are the higher ups, the elites, put into protection mode. Now, these people here, there are conspiracy theories that were discussed in this, and they actually had a conference about this, and they argued to a grand jury. This was done by Carol Darling, who was in 1986. She was a social worker, right? There was a conspiracy that involved anyone that was skeptical, right? And that was kind of where they originally pointed it. And it got to the point where there was enough resistance by what they considered to be investigators that were supposed to be helping this cause, that they ended up basically arguing to a grand jury that there was a conspiracy that reached the entire government. Her husband, Brad Darling, gave a conference that had presentations about the satanic conspiracy that goes all the way back to antiquity, but it is now permeating the American communities and the United States government. This is in what they consider the political elites. This is what they said in the 80s.
I definitely think there's truth to that.
And now we have ritual abuse. This is all the things that we're now hearing about today is what they said in the 80s, which is there are children that are being born by undocumented people, so therefore there is no record of birth, there is no birth certificate, there is no citizenship. They're literally born to be trafficked amongst their own people. Now, knowing what I know about trafficked children, because of all the studies and people that I donate to, they've done all this research, they've done all this work, and the average child, if they're being sexually abused at this early age, if they start at the age of 1, which some don't even wait that long, some happen immediately, they don't last but 7 years at the high end. And if they're gone, there's zero recourse because they don't exist. There are women who are, again, brought in. They have no citizenship. There's nothing that legally ties them to the country. So even if they get out, where do they go? They're literally sex slaves.
Yeah.
And these are all the things that were discussed right here in 1980, 84, 86 by all of these people that we are now saying again today. The pendulum has swung. Oh, no, there's really nothing there. And now it's came back and, oh my God, now we have physical documents. Oh, now we have flight logs. Now they've gotten a whole lot bigger. There's a lot more of them. And they've gotten very sloppy with the way that they're going about it. What are the odds that that was also happening then?
That is I think is crazy, and I definitely think this is a other type of episode that we need to do.
So,
but we're talking about the Satanic Panic and how it swings, and we're seeing the change now in society. Let's talk about it swinging back the opposite direction in time. And so, I mean, we coined Teenage Dirtbag in the 80s.
Yeah, sorry, man. I took that on the way.
But I know exactly how we're doing this. Is that, I mean, we talk about it changing from then to the 80s till now, and we see that change. But let's go back in time where we get like the Teenage Dirtbag and the Satanic Panic. This goes way back. And I mean, we will talk about the OG. I think the OG Teenage Dirtbag in the next episode. And again, this ties into politics and everything else because the OG Teenage Dirtbag, in my opinion, is Alice Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt's daughter. I think she has a very interesting life, and we're going to get into it because if you guys don't know, Theodore Roosevelt, pretty great president, did quite a bit. Pretty great person, I think. He's a great human because his life, also just in general,
insane. Yeah,
pretty insane. Like, if you want to talk about like toxic masculinity, this guy is nothing but masculinity to like the T. Which I was like, God, this guy is pretty great. But I think his life and his daughter's life are very interesting, and we're going to go into how I think she becomes the first, at least modern, teenage dirtbag that we see in the U.S.
But that precedes the Satanic Panic, right?
It precedes the Satanic Panic.
So will she be a pre-runner?
I think she's a pre-runner to the Satanic Panic because I also think a lot of the stuff that she was doing was also called satanic. Her family was also scrutinized for a lot of that stuff too, and again, I think it's also the reason why I think she's such a genius in her life is the fact that she manipulates the media the way that she wants it. Even if it doesn't always play out in her favor, she has the media eating out of her hands since the age of like 16, which also is crazy kind of power when you think this is back in like the 30s, the 40s. Like, this is crazy power for anybody to have, especially when it's not just the U.S. She is traveling the world, and people are treating her like she's a princess.
Would this really be any different than the children of today's politicians? If it is different, I think it would be a good idea to go into that.
I think we'll talk about that in that episode because I do think there are ties, but I also think today's politicians and celebrities' children are a little different for the fact that I think they are very medicated and are very boxed. Because I mean, one of the celebrities that pops in my mind when you're talking about famous people and celebrities and politicians' children, the first person that pops in my head is Chet Hanks.
Oh, I thought you were gonna go with the Will Smith angle. Okay, got you.
Oh no, I think Chet Hanks is pretty. But I'm just saying that I think a lot of these kids, instead of going the way that Alice goes, they go more down the drug. Is it forced on them? Is it part of the satanic rituals? But again, I think Satanic Panic is a huge outlier of what, and at least it highlights the teenage dirtbag. But in the next episode, we're going to be talking about Alice Roosevelt, the OG teenage dirtbag. I'm going to button this up really quick with some plugs. If you guys didn't know, we're going to be launching a Bunker Buddies website pretty soon. So the bunkerbuddies.podcast.com. We should be launching pretty soon. If it's up, you'll see it down below. If not, keep your eyes out because it is coming. We're going to have merch. We're going to have a whole bunch of great stuff. Throwing it over to Texas right here. We got Beer Beans Bullets. Obviously, we got the YouTube channel. Go and check that out. But what else do we have?
We have a Patreon.
We have a Patreon. What can they find on Patreon?
Go to Patreon and look up Beer Beans Bullets. We're the only ones on there by that name that I'm aware of. And you'll find behind-the-scenes content. You'll find probably video to like this here that we're doing, at least partial. I won't release the entire stuff up front. We have a really low bar of entry, which is like $3. I don't believe in really scamming anybody. And if you guys like it and stick around and want to pay more, we have a few more options higher up. And those higher up tiers get you more stuff, eventual personal live streams, phone calls, Q&A. I don't know. We're currently working through that. We haven't got to that point yet. But
I mean, let's go back to that. $3 a month. That's not a lot. That's a cup of coffee. That's a beer.
that's a stick of gum.
That's a stick of gum. $3 a month, right? That's you buy me a beer once a month. I think that's great. If we were just hanging out once a month at a bar and you bought me one beer, you just bought basically the vault. You are going to get a lot of content that we have released, that we haven't released. We're going to get content that we got pulled off of YouTube. You're going to get everything. You're getting full access for a cost of a beer, cost of a pack of gum. So, $3 a month, low entry fee. You're going to get a lot of cool exclusives. We might be getting merch. We're going to be getting a lot of cool stuff that you can find only on the Beer Beans Bullets Patreon.
Yes. Yes.
Ooh. And with that, it is time for the gym. So, remember, stay locked, stay loaded, trust no signal, and we'll see you next time.